Governor, will you raise your right hand and say after me, I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York
and the Constitution of the State of New York
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
and I will faithfully perform the duties of the office
And I will faithfully perform the duties of the office
of Governor of the State of New York.
of Governor of the State of New York.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Judge Desmond. This is a beautiful, beautiful celebration of our state, of our superb system of government, and of our extraordinary good fortune. I'm very grateful that we've been allowed to share it. Permit me a special word of gratitude to three people. First, to the one most effective instrument of our success this year, Matilda. Then to the man who has led this state courageously, honestly, and well for 8 years, to whom we owe, all of us, a debt, and I a very special one, because he gave me the opportunity, the first opportunity I had to serve the people of the state of New York in 1975, when he gave me an opportunity. I did not win on my own. He asked me to be Secretary of State. To Hugh L. Carey, Governor of the State. And to an institution among public officials, a man who cannot be with us physically today, but who has been with me from the beginning, what was then universally regarded as an implausible pursuit, a man of strength and stature and splendid style, the mayor of the city of Albany, Erastus Garner. I would be much less than honest if I didn't confess to some small personal satisfaction at having won 2 elections, especially since I know the other feeling so well. But I'd be less than intelligent if I didn't recognize that the outcome was not so much a personal vindication as it was the judgment of the people of New York on the policies and principles and programs which we advanced as the reason and justification for my candidacy. Throughout the campaign, I spoke insistently on what we believe our government must do over the next 4 years. I hope the next 4 years will show that I did not speak idly or cynically. We will go forward with the program of jobs and justice that I described in the campaign and that I believe the people of this state generally regard as a fair appraisal of our needs. A criminal justice system that is firmer, surer, more effective, a vehicle of deterrence. A new emphasis on high technology and agribusiness and domestic manufacturing. A responsible approach, a continuing responsible approach to our fiscal difficulties. An infrastructure program that will rebuild our state's physical strength even while we put to work unemployed New Yorkers. A continuing emphasis on educational excellence, reformation of our system of regulating utilities, reorganization of the operating agency for mass transit in the 12 counties of our metropolitan New York region. We'll go forward with these and all the other elements of our program for New York State that I've talked about for all of this year. Part of that program will be our message to Washington. We will say to our president and the present administration that we have no intention of using Washington as a scapegoat for all of our failures and difficulties. Nor will we use Washington as an excuse for not doing for ourselves as a state everything we can do for ourselves. On the other hand, we will not allow the national administration to escape responsibility for its policies. We will continue to point out what we believe respectfully is a massive inequity of the new redistribution of national wealth, a redistribution that moves our nation's resources from the vulnerable Northeast and Midwest to the affluent, or at least less troubled, parts of the nation. We will point out what we believe is the cruelty and economic recklessness of the unemployment that these policies produce, and the mistake and we will point out what we believe is the mistake of an excessive multiplication of nuclear weapons that denies us the resources we need. Because we meant what we said in the campaign. All of these positions will be part of the flesh and blood, the policies and programs of our new administration. You will see them described in detail a few days from now in the State of the State message, and in even greater detail in the budget to follow, the budget which will be presented to the legislature and to the entire state. For now, however, please allow me to speak just a few words about what I hope will be not the flesh and blood, but the soul of this administration. The philosophy of a government is the pattern revealed by the lines that connect hundreds of decisions that government makes on a day-to-day basis. Over the course of our history, these lines have often meandered and formed unclear images. The last few years, however, have raised sharp, indeed profound questions about government's purpose and government's role. These questions are being discussed at all levels and are operating to affect the principles that touch the lives of our people. In that debate, the Empire State's view of government's ultimate rationale will have very special significance. Now, this is the way I see it. This state has always led the way in demonstrating government's best uses. Overall, it has pursued a course of progressive pragmatism for more than 50 years, without dramatic deviation, whatever party happened to be in power. New York has proven that government can be a positive source for good, and it still can be. I believe government's purpose, basically, is to allow those blessed with talent to go as far as they can on their own. But I believe that government also has an obligation to assist those who, for whatever inscrutable reason, have been left out by fate, the homeless, the infirm, the destitute, to help provide those necessary things which, through no fault of their own, they cannot provide for themselves. Of course, we should have only the government we need, but we must have, and we will insist on, all the government we need. So a technically balanced budget that fails to meet the reasonable needs of the middle class and the poor would be to us the emblem of hypocrisy. It has become popular in some quarters to argue that the principal function of government is to make instruments of war and to clear obstacles from the way of the strong. It is said that the rest will happen automatically. The cream will rise to the top, whether the cream be well-endowed individuals or fortunate regions of the nation. Survival of the fittest may be a good working description of the process of evolution, but a government of humans should elevate itself to a higher order, one which tries to fill the cruel gaps left by chance and by a wisdom that we don't fully understand. I would rather have laws written by Rabbi Hillel or by Pope John Paul than by Darwin. I would rather live in a state that has chipped into the marble face of its capital these memorable words of the great rabbi: "If I am not for myself, who is for me? But if I am for myself alone, then what am I?" Or the words of our great Pope: "Freedom and riches and strength bring responsibility. We cannot leave to the poor and disadvantaged only the crumbs from the feast. Rather, we must treat the less fortunate as guests. A society as blessed as ours should be able to find room at the table, shelter for the homeless, work for the idle, care for the elderly and infirm, and hope for the destitute." To demand less of our government or of ourselves would be to evade our proper responsibility. At the very least, the government of this generation should be able to do for those who follow at least what has been done for us. And if my election proves anything, it proves how very much this system has been able to do for us. Like everyone in this room today, and everyone in this state today, except for our Native American brothers and sisters, I am the offspring of immigrants. My parents came some 60 years ago from another part of this world, driven by deprivation, without funds, without education, without skills. When my mother arrived at Ellis Island, she was alone and afraid. She carried little more than a suitcase and a piece of paper with the address of a laborer husband who had preceded her here looking for work. She passed through all the small indignities visited on immigrants everywhere, always. She was subjected to the hurried condescension of those who decide if others are good enough to enter, or at least not bad enough to be kept out. Like millions of others, my mother and father came here with very little more than a willingness to spend all their effort in honest toil. They asked only for the opportunity to work and for some protection in those moments when they would not be able to protect themselves, thanks to a government that was wise enough to help them without stifling them and strong enough to provide them with opportunities to earn their own bread. They survived. They remained a people of modest means, but that they were able to build a family and live in dignity and see one of their children go from behind their little grocery store in South Jamaica where he was born to the highest seat in the greatest state, in the greatest nation. That by itself is an almost ineffably beautiful commentary on this magnificent system of American democracy, but this is a personal story. This is the story of all of us. What our imperfect but peerless system of government has done for those two frightened immigrants from Europe, it has done for millions of others in different ways. That experience is a source of pride and gratitude, but it has to be much more. It must serve as a challenge to all of us as we face the future. The achievements of our past impose upon us the obligation to do at least as much for those who come after us. It would be a terrible desecration of our history to allow the difficulties of the moment, which pale when compared to those faced by our ancestors, to excuse our obligation to produce government that excels at doing what government is supposed to do. We need not fear the challenge. Underlying everything I believe about our government is an unshakable conviction that it is good enough to do what must be done, and more, for all of our present travail, and I know it well, the deficits, the hordes of homeless, unemployed, and victimized, the loss of spirit and belief. For all of this, I believe that we are wise enough to address our deficits without taxing ourselves into bankruptcy, strong enough to reconcile order with justice, brave enough to bring opportunity and hope to those who have neither. We can and we will refuse to settle for just survival, and certainly not just survival of the fittest. I believe we can balance our lives and our society even as we balance our books. We can. If those who today stand on platforms built by their forebears' pain and are warmed by applause earned by their forebears' courage remember who we are and where we came from and what we have been taught. Those who made our history taught us above all things the idea of family, mutuality, the sharing of benefits and burdens fairly for the good of all. It is an idea essential to our success, and no family that favored its strong children or that in the name of even-handedness failed to help its vulnerable ones would be worthy of the name. And no state or nation that chooses to ignore its troubled regions and people while watching others thrive can call itself justified. We must be the family of New York, feeling one another's pain, sharing one another's blessings, equitably, honestly, fairly, without respect to geography or race or political affiliation. Those who made our history taught us more. By their willingness to sweat for a lifetime just to give their children something better, they taught us the virtue of hard work. These things, then, I pledge as I begin my term. That I have learned what they had to teach. That if we do not succeed, it will not be because we have divided one part of this state from the other, or dealt unfairly with any region or any group of people, or forgotten that we are a family. Nor will it be because we have failed to expend all the strength and effort that we might have. This will be a government as hard-working and realistic as the thousands of families and businesses struggling to survive a national economy that is more distressed at this moment than at any time since the 1930s. I have no illusions about how difficult this will be. It will require that we pass a fierce test of our resolve. But if the risks we face are greater, the resources we command are greater still. A rich, good earth, water that ties us together, replenishes us, feeds our capacity to grow, an education system matched by few other states, indeed even nations, anywhere in the world, an irreplaceable weave of roads and rails, the world's largest banks and financial institutions, communication systems, and markets. And more than all of this, our marvelous people, the offspring of Native Americans, Africans, Europeans, Asians, people from the North and people from the South, the children of those who refuse to stop reaching, stop building, stop believing, the children of those who refuse to believe it could not be done. We are the sons and daughters of giants, and we have been born to their great. We begin to meet our obligation today, all of us together. So, good people of the Empire State, I ask all of you, whatever your political beliefs, whatever your region, whatever you think of me as an individual, to help me keep the moving and awesome oath that I just swore before you and before God. Pray that we all see New York for the family that it is, that all of us sworn into office today give New York the leadership it deserves, that I might be the state's good servant and God's too. And Pop, wherever you are, and I think I know, for all the ceremony and the big house and the pomp and circumstance, please don't let me forget. Thank you, and God bless you.